All right. Well, thank you for joining us today for Brave Steps Changemaker workshop. Tonight's session is called Being an Ally, Small Actions and Big Impact. So I want to thank you all for joining us. My name is Emily. I'm an advocate and a volunteer with Brave Step. And I also have the pleasure of introducing Katie Overcash, who is a licensed clinical social worker and who has worked with Brave Step for years. Katie, would you like to share a bit more about yourself and your work?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emily. I am honored to have been working with Brave Step since 2018 in many different capacities. But most recently, I've done a lot of work in this space of loved ones and being an ally for those who've gone through sexual violence. In my regular full-time job, I'm a mental health outpatient therapist, so I have my own private practice, and I've been doing that for 20 years now, and my specialty is working with people who've been through sexual violence.
Thanks, Katie. Well, for those of you who are new to our organization, Brave Step is a nonprofit which empowers individuals who have been impacted by sexual violence. This includes survivors, their loved ones, friends, coworkers, and advocates. Throughout workshops like this one, you'll gain practical tools to support others and help prevent future sexual violence. Tonight's workshop is our foundational level, which we hope will provide you with the facts and in community with others that will help you feel more confident and empowered to make brave changes within your own communities. So we're not expecting perfection or expertise, just a willingness to start brave conversations. For those of you who maybe want to dive a little bit deeper, we will be offering a level 2 workshop called Deepening Allyship, which will be available a little bit later on. We'll keep you posted on that. And before we begin, just a note that all participants will be muted throughout the conversation. And as Katie and I are presenting, feel free to type any questions that you might have in the chat box. And at the end, we'll be able to answer questions as time permits during our Q&A session. And there'll also be further opportunities for interacting with your community here during some breakout sessions. So for our safe space, we want to make sure that everybody can participate in a way that they feel comfortable. So for our confidentiality, want to make sure that's what's shared here will stay here. So any personal stories will stay here, but obviously take any lessons that you've learned with you and share with others. We want to ask everyone to practice with respect and lead with curiosity and compassion, not only for others, but for yourself. This is a heavy topic, so make sure that you're showing yourself compassion throughout this. And sharing, right? You want to do this within your comfort zone. There's no pressure, but you just share what is available within your capacity this evening. And finally, make sure that you are practicing self-care and engaged at a level that feels right for you. So some of us may be struggling with current situations or carrying a lot right now. Certain parts of today's conversation might feel emotionally heavy or bring up strong reactions. So please honor whatever you are feeling and make sure that you take care of yourself in ways that support you. This might look like taking a step away for a moment, turning off your camera, taking a few breaths, or even taking a sip of ice water. And if you'd like any additional support at any point, you can send a private message to Crystal, myself, or Katie. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with square breathing. This is one of the grounding activities. So we can take a moment to settle into our space together. I'm going to run through the guide of this exercise. So for some people, structured breathing provides a calming structure. For others, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So if that's the case for you, please feel free to freestyle and maybe you do some light stretching or place a hand on your heart. Notice the weight of your body in the chair, or just simply breathing in and out to your natural rhythm. So if this feels comfortable to you, you can soften your gaze, close your eyes, or look at the screen, whatever feels safest. We're going to take one natural breath in and out. And now we're going to gently inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4. Pause 2, 3, 4. You can continue for a couple more rounds. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale. And now you can return to your regular breathing. You can use that at any time if that's helpful for you. And just a reminder, this is one of the skills that's really helpful as an ally, because the more regulated that we are with our own emotions, the better and more effective that we can show up as an ally. In tonight's workshop, you can expect to learn the definition of sexual violence, consent, to better understand the impact that sexual violence has on survivors as well as their loved ones. And finally, you'll learn how you can compassionately support survivors and everyday actions you can take to show up as an ally. So now I'd like to invite you to share in the chat what comes to mind when you hear the word sexual violence or sexual trauma. This can be one word or a thought. What comes to mind when you hear the word sexual violence or trauma, abuse, broken trust? Yep. And I just want to there's no right or wrong responses. Life-changing, boundaries crossed, absolutely. All right, thank you for sharing, everyone in the chat. Broken heart, pain, yes, thank you. Hurt, broken trust, suffering, hiding feelings. Blame. Why me? Yeah. Wounds. Long-term recovery, absolutely. Shame. Yes, it's my fault. Yep. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I really appreciate everyone's vulnerability. Thank you for sharing in the chat. So we will be returning to these themes later on, the impact that sexual violence has on, as I said, not only survivors, but their loved ones. So I appreciate you all touching on some of the things that we'll touch on later. So sexual violence is sexual activity without consent. We're going to move now into the facts, and this can be heavy. So again, just reminding everyone to take care. Sexual violence is any unwanted and coerced behaviors, actions, and words that are sexual in nature and committed without consent. So this can include words that are written, digital, or spoken. And I want to emphasize that this doesn't have to be a physical act. Any attempt at a sexual activity, any pressure, any verbal harassment also is sexual violence. Survivors, surprisingly, may not even recognize that what happened to them counts. And many survivors are unaware that what they experienced qualifies as sexual trauma. This is especially true when violence has been normalized, if it has happened within the family in childhood, or if it was committed by someone close to them. Trauma symptoms can often be subtle or misinterpreted, and memories are often fragmented or may be repressed, which make it even harder to identify that sexual violence has occurred. So in order for someone to consent freely to a sexual activity, there has to be consent. And consent, we have the acronym FRIES. FRIES, the F stands for freely given. So consent must be a genuine choice, not influenced by pressure or fear or guilt or manipulation. So an example would be, I want to do this, but only if you want to do it as well. And if not, that's totally okay, right? So a person should also be able to feel comfortable saying no, because if they know that their words will be respected and that there will be no harmful consequences against anyone, themselves or someone else. So fear of harmful consequences. For the R, we think reversible. Consent should always be reversible, that anyone can change their mind at any time, even if they've done the activity before with the person. So an example would be, I was really enjoying this and all of a sudden I'm not. So let's stop. And that's okay. Someone who previously consented, if they said, actually, I'm tired now and I would just prefer to cuddle. And the other person adjusts and cuddles without complaint, without pressure, without guilt, without pouting, right? So the person has the freely given their consent. They can change their mind if they want to. And then I is informed. Consent requires accurate information and an understanding of the full picture. So everyone involved needs to understand exactly what they're agreeing to and with any, if any risks are involved. If they don't understand the full picture or they don't know all the risks involved, then it's not consent. So an example that where it is consent would be if two people agree to an activity and neither partner will change the conditions without discussing it. So this could apply to, types of birth control, or if anyone has an STD, that everyone should know all the information ahead of time. I thought of a non-sexual example, which would be if someone said, hey, would you like to come over for dinner? And they say, yes, I would love to. But then when they get there, the other person's entire family is there. Well, they changed the conditions. They didn't agree to have dinner with the entire family, just with the person, right? So then that they would not have consented to that. All right, now for E, enthusiastic. Consent should be clear, excited, yes. For example, yes, I'd really like that, or an enthusiastic, active participation. So if someone says, do you want to give me a hug? And they don't say yes, but they run into your arms and hug you tightly, right? They maybe didn't say the words yes, but they had enthusiastic, active participation. If there is a silence or a hesitation or a maybe, that is not consent. Silence is never consent. So if it doesn't feel enthusiastic, it should be treated as a no. And finally, specific. Saying yes to one thing does not mean yes to everything. So I'm okay with kissing, but nothing more. Agreeing to one activity does not imply consent for another activity. And so there should be an ongoing conversation. So if someone says, yes, I would like to watch a movie, but would you also like to now go get dessert afterwards, right? That ongoing consent, it's an ongoing conversation of checking in with the other person and if seeing that you are both on the same page. So consent needs to be given each time for each activity. And just to reiterate, so consent, remember fries, freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic. These conversations need to happen ongoing. They don't have to be perfect. They may be awkward, but they do need to happen. Silence, as I said, is not consent, and consent can never be given if there is a fear, if there's pressure, guilt, coercion, if someone is under the legal age of consent, if there is any illness or disability that limits a person's ability to choose or to say yes or no. And if, again, if there's an influence of alcohol or drugs, then they cannot give consent. Sexual violence, surprisingly, when I was, I think, probably first diving into all this, I had a misconception and I didn't realize that sexual violence is about power and control. It is an act of violence. And um, so just find, I lost my screen. There we are. So It's never about desire. That was the misconception that I had. And it's never about desire. It is only about domination and harm. And it's normal that there would be feelings of anger and sadness and surprise as that kind of sinks in, that sexual violence is not about desire. It's only about power and control. On our next slide, we have some examples of the various forms of sexual violence. We have sexual abuse, sexual assault or rape, harassment, stalking, indecent exposure, voyeurism, cyber harassment, trafficking, sexual exploitation. So there's also a growing sexual violence in the digital world as well, and harassment. So I had a question, which was, do you think that there are any forms that are more minimized than others? Are there any of these forms that you see being minimized that you've experienced? You can put in the chat, drop in the chat what type of form of sexual violence that you've seen minimized. Nope, none of them are minimized. Okay. Degrading sexual imagery, stalking. Yep. Online forms tend to be minimized compared to in-person interactions. And especially with the digital world growing, and as we're all spending more time on the internet, yep, cyber harassment, stalking and cyber harassment, degrading sexual imagery, pornography. Yep. Thank you, everyone. So I have another question, which is a poll, which is, where do you think that most sexual assaults occur? Let's see if we can get that poll. There we go. Give you all about 10 more seconds to get that in. All right. All right. So the majority of people said homes or residence, and 6% of you said workplace or school, and another 6% said open public spaces. And actually homes and residence are the most, let's see if we can get that shared. Okay, yeah, so 68.5% of all sexual assaults occur in or near a victim's home or their relative's home. I don't know if it seems like a lot of you already knew that, so that's, yeah. And it has a lot of ramifications too, knowing that's where it most often happens. All right. But sexual violence impacts every community, all races, ethnicities, and cultures. It cuts across all income levels, education, religion, geography, and sexual violence impacts all sexual orientations. It also impacts all ages and all genders. And the CDC recently reported that nearly 50% of women and more than 1 in 6 men will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. The majority of rape victims are female, and 90% of adult rape victims are female. 82% of juvenile rape victims are female. And the majority of sexual assault victims are between the age of 12 and 34. So take a pause to. So the time is ticking, because unfortunately every 74 seconds someone in the US is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes that someone is a child, and many survivors wait an average of 20 years before they disclose sexual abuse, if they share at all. So please take a moment to take a breath and I'll pass it over to Kate.
Thanks, Emily. So now that we've gotten the statistics and kind of understanding where this happened, who this happens to, um, just kind of think, how are you feeling right now? Is this, for some of you, this may be, new information or shocking. Some of you may have already known these things. And I always like to emphasize when we're thinking about these statistics is that this is what's reported. And I don't know which means they're getting the reports from, but I've had plenty of people that I've worked with in all the years of doing this that have never told anyone other than me, or maybe only told a couple people. So those numbers aren't included. So I always say that these numbers might be quite higher than what we actually have, as far as statistics goes. Yep. So we got heavy, heavy heart, stressed, heartbreaking. Yeah. And this is why some workshops like this and all of you people that showed up tonight, this is why this is so important. If these numbers, are this high or even higher, it's even more important that we have people out there that are willing to be allies, willing to learn, willing to, support those who've been through this. So I like to invite you to soften your gaze, or maybe you close your eyes. Just kind of check in with your body. With all that information, how's our body feeling? Is there any sensations that you feel? Check in with your heart rate. See if you can notice anything there, or perhaps your breath. See if you can locate where that tension is in your body. Is it in your jaw? Is it your shoulders, your hands? And you can lift your gaze, coming back to your intention, why you showed up tonight. Why are you here, right? And why is this so important? Why is this important not only for those of us here in this space together tonight, but for us to spread the word about being allies, about how often this occurs, where this occurs, who this happens to. So obviously sexual violence impacts the person that it happened to, right? But then if we think about these rings around the person, it impacts those people too, those people on the inner ring, so significant others, best friends, family. Those people are going to be greatly impacted because now their loved one has gone through this. They're there, on the front lines of providing the support. They're on the front lines of the emotional stuff that comes up for this person. And then take that ring out another level. Maybe these are other people connected to this person, but maybe not, quite as close to them. Maybe it's coworkers, maybe it's roommates, neighbors, friends that aren't super close with them, right? Um, this is such a ripple effect. Think about the next layer out from that. Think about workplaces as a general, communities, schools, all of those, other spaces that are affected by this happening to that individual. So I mentioned earlier the loved ones program. So this is kind of the precursor to the loved ones program. So we have three programs that we run kind of throughout the year. Some of them are virtual, some of them are in person. But we have three different types. We have two that are for people supporting an adult who's been through sexual violence. That adult could have been an adult when it occurred, or they could have been a child. But one of those is for significant others. And then the other one is for friends and family of an adult survivor. So just giving them getting them in a space together so that those people can connect, provide a support network for each other, and kind of talk through and learn how to support that person that's been through it. We also have another one that's for friends, family, other adults in the life of a child who's been through sexual violence. So once again, kind of creating a network of those people so they can support each other and learn more about this. If that's something that you're interested in, please, make sure you're staying in contact with Brave Step. We've offered those in person, virtual. There's 6 sessions. So sometimes we've done them kind of week by week, and sometimes we've done like 3 sessions and then another 3 sessions. But it's really going to be something that's going to be more specific, a lot more education, things like that. A little bit smaller groups too. So. So, what we're here tonight, obviously, is to become an ally. So, we've gotten all the information from Emily, kind of the foundational things so we can understand, what we're working with. And then now we're going to move into how do we show up as an ally? What kind of things how can we present ourselves? How can we show up? Things that we can say to somebody who's been through this. Think of this. Like you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining power in this space to help somebody that you may know right now or somebody in the future. And I don't want you to think about this as something that's impossible to do, right? Like we're going to teach you some very tangible things tonight, or we're going to talk about some very tangible things. But these little small things that we're gonna talk about and explore, that really adds up. Just being able to sit there with someone who has gone through this, letting them cry, letting them be angry, letting them tell you whatever it is they want to tell you, those are the things that matter. So, what is our collective responsibility? So, number one, listening. Really, survivors just want to be able to, they may not want to go into a lot of details. They may only just want to tell just a little bit, but they want people to talk to. They want people to hear them, and they want people who are safe. So, we have to really, when someone is telling us this information, we want to make sure that we're not. Answering with judgment, right? Like, where were you? Or why didn't you do this? Or why did you do this? Or did you say this? Or did you not say that? Those kinds of things, right? Like, we're just listening. We don't need to be kind of questioning their actions or their choices and things like that. I think, just really right off the bat, one of the most important things is to believe the survivor. There's so many things you hear out in society of, you know, people not believing when survivors come forward. And so the biggest thing we can do is believe what they say and not question, well, are you sure it happened that way? Or was it like this? Those kinds of things. Just, yeah, I believe you. And even just saying that, I believe you can work wonders as a supporter of an ally or supporter of a survivor. So we want to prevent future harm, and this is about educating ourselves, preventing future harm for anybody else out in society. We don't want this to happen to, but preventing future harm for that survivor. So we don't want them. They've already gone through something horrific. We don't want them to have other things happen to them that make this even more intense for them. So we want to make sure that people around the survivor are not joking about things, saying inappropriate things, crossing boundaries, things like that. We're going to model healthy behaviors. So not only are we going to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, kind of like in the beginning when we did the square breathing, we want to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to show up for this person and we're being taken care of. The whole concept of you can't pour from an empty cup. So same thing here. We're taking care of ourselves. That models to the survivor about self-care, but also modeling healthy behaviors in asking consent for physical touch, modeling healthy behaviors of stopping inappropriate conversations, you know, modeling healthy behaviors of checking in with people when, just randomly checking in with them, or when we notice something has shifted for them, we're going to check in, things like that. And then as an ally, we're going to make sure that we're educating and advocating. So we have several steps that y'all can take this week or in the next couple of weeks to really get more information out there. Start having these brave conversations with other people in your network. I think social media can be very powerful in sharing information. And so we're going to, put that stuff out there so that we can get more people educated like you are tonight. So an ally listens, like we said earlier, we learn, which we're doing tonight, we're going to keep doing, and then we're going to take action. So those are the three things I want you to walk away from tonight with is that we're listening to survivors, we're continuously learning, and then we're also taking action. We're doing things out in society for that survivor or for any survivor in general to stop harmful behaviors from happening. All right, so what do we do when we listen? Like we talked about earlier, we're going to believe the survivor, we're going to validate. We're going to validate any feelings that they say that they have. If they feel overwhelmed or shocked, angry, sad, any of those things, we're going to validate that. We're going to say, yeah, this is, something to be really angry about, or yes, it's okay to be frustrated about these things. We're going to respect body safety. So just with anybody in general, but especially survivors of sexual violence, we want to make sure that somebody else has been unsafe with their body. We want to make sure that we're safe with their body. And this is going to come in with physical touch. So somebody who has gone through this, they may be in a space, you might have hugged them before, and that's kind of your pattern with them. But this particular day that you run into them, maybe they don't want a hug, right? Or they don't want any physical contact. So we're going to respect their body safety. If they say, no, I don't want to be touched right now or touched today, we're going to say, okay, that makes sense. We're going to offer resources. So we're not going to force these to them. We're not going to be pushy with this stuff, but we're going to make sure that we have resources to give them and that we're going to offer that if they don't want it or, they take them, but they're not kind of ready to follow through with reaching out for some support, things like that, we're not going to be upset about that. We're going to understand that we've given them the information and that they can take that and they can utilize that when they're ready. So we're going to respect the process. I think whenever we see someone in our life suffering, we, we don't want them to suffer anymore and we want them to feel better. And we want that to happen quickly. And, I think someone said earlier that this could be, I can't remember exactly what someone said, but lifelong, or it could take a long time for this to, heal from or to kind of get on top of things. And we're going to respect that. It's not something that someone gets over in a day or two or a month or a year. It might take quite some time, and everybody's a little different in that. And there's things that impact how long it might take for somebody to get to a place where they feel, a little more stabilized from this. We're also going to respect this person's autonomy. So we're going to trust that they know themselves the best. They know how to take care of themselves and that they can make choices for themselves. That's rebuilding the things that were harmed when the sexual violence occurred. So if choices were taken away from them, then we're going to make sure that they have choices now and that they know that they're able to, we're going to support them in them taking care of themselves and their process. So we're going to learn about preventing sexual violence, like we're talking about tonight. I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we're going to have a level 2 of this program. If it's something that you want to go further with, we're going to have more information out there about that. We're going to learn about healthy relationships. So this is something that I think as a society we're becoming more in tune with. There's a lot of information on social media about this, and you see a lot of things out there nowadays about red flags, green flags, I think yellow flags. But we're becoming as a society, we're becoming better understanding of what is healthy relationships and what are things that are red flags. And so we're going to continue learning about that. Consent and autonomy. So, like Emily mentioned earlier, the fries, we learn about that. We're learning about consent too, and not in a sexual nature, might just be consent on, is it okay for me to hug you today? Or Is it okay to talk about this today? I've had plenty of situations where I'll want to talk to someone about something and I'll say, is that something that you're okay talking about today? And if they say no, I'm okay with that, right? So asking consent when it comes to something that somebody else is kind of being exposed to, whether it's physical contact, conversations, things like that. Um, Healthy boundaries. This is another thing that I think we're learning more and more about as a society, but we're going to learn about how to have those healthy boundaries, how to respect other people's boundaries, what to do when someone sets a boundary, what kind of boundaries are necessary, things like that. Challenging harmful norms and beliefs. So, I think there's a lot of kind of information out there that people have from wherever about who goes through sexual violence or there's myths about where it happens or why it happens, things like that. And when we hear these things out in the world or we see something online that someone's written about something that we know is not true, we're going to call it out. We're going to say something about that because we need to stop that information from spreading. And it takes us as the supporters of those who've been through sexual violence to do that. We don't want to put that on the survivor. They're already going through enough. We need to be able to stand up and say, hey, this is not okay. And then we're learning how to support a survivor. So we are doing that tonight. And like I said, there's more information out there. There's other programs and things like that. One thing I want to emphasize is we're not going to fix this problem as allies, right? We are just one part, one piece of the puzzle. So if you think about all these pieces that have to kind of come together to help the survivor heal, being an ally, being someone's, has someone's back, whether you're a loved one or just somebody that you know in your network, you're one part of that puzzle. If you think about all the other things that might be, a legal thing, there might be a medical thing, mental health thing, there might be organizations like Brave Step that are part of that puzzle, but you by yourself are not the only one that's, needs to be involved to kind of help this person, and you're not going to fix it. None of us are going to fix it. It's all about providing support and giving them a place to express, whatever is going on with them and go through their own process. So as allies, we're going to speak up, we're going to call out, we're going to lead. So we're going to be those voices for the survivors to stop this stuff from happening, stop from harmful conversations or inappropriate jokes, things like that. Um, some of the ways we're going to do this is we're going to model respectful language around consent and boundaries. So we're not going to, we're going to ask for consent. We're going to be respectful of, like I said earlier, hey, is this something you want to talk about right now? If not, that's totally cool. We can change the subject. Um, we're going to have brave conversations, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to be able to talk with other people about sexual violence. I think in all my years of doing this work, it's a taboo subject. People don't want to talk about it. People don't want to believe that it's happening. We've had some societal movements. I think maybe, in the Me Too section, there was a lot of bringing this topic to the forefront. And even more recently, in the last couple of years, I think there's been more conversations about this and more people willing to speak up about it. It's still quite taboo, and people don't really want to go out there and talk about it a whole lot. So we are going to be those people that are going to, even if it's just sharing it with someone one-on-one or sharing it on our social media, we're going to have these conversations. We're going to make sure that we hold other people accountable. So, like I said, if we hear someone saying something inappropriate, making a joke, saying something online that's incorrect, we're going to hold them accountable and say, hey, that's not okay to joke about, or hey, that's not true, or we don't need to speak about people like that in that kind of way. Um, we're going to empower others. So we want to make sure that, think about that ripple effect we talked about earlier, how, sexual violence impacts all the people around the survivor. We can also create a ripple effect of bringing this to the forefront, having these conversations, letting people know that that this is happening. It's happening to a lot of people. I'm sure whether people know it or not, there's a lot of people in their network that is impacted by this. And so we want to continue having conversations about it. Okay, so we're going to actually do some practicing here in just a little bit because I really want y'all to start getting your feet wet with how to have these conversations. So we're going to give you some roles, and I'm going to give you some scripts. So you may want to grab some paper and a pen if you want to write some of these things down. Um, when we give you these scripts, I want to make sure that you make this sound like it comes from you, right? These are just scripts, or they might be my words or somebody else's words, but I want them to be individualized to you. Make it sound like it's something that you would say, and personalize it. And you can use the ones that we provide. If there's other ones that you know of, you can use those as well. But I want people to be equipped. I think when we are faced with hearing about this information from a survivor, or we hear someone out in public speaking in an inappropriate way, sometimes our emotions may take over and we may freeze, we may get angry, we may, just kind of lose what is in our cognitive brain and not know what to say. And so that's why we're making this very approachable and simple for you. But keeping these things to where you can reflect on them, kind of go back and review this stuff and just make it very simple so that it's easy to do out in the world. All right, so if you'll just put in the chat, how do you feel if and when someone discloses to you? So if this has happened to you before, or if this is maybe something that hasn't happened before, but it potentially could, how do you feel about hearing that information? So we're not judging them. Thank you for trusting me. I'm sorry that happened to you. We have empathy. Feel good that they trusted me with that information. Absolutely. There's pressure that they want you to say the right thing. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that too. Thank them for the trust. I think that's great. Concerned and thought about how to help. I've supported someone escaping their husband. Yep. Trusted. Thank you for your trust. I'm here for you. Yep. For the victim, but happy they are willing to speak of it. Great. Yeah. So if this has not happened to you before, but you're imagining, someone choosing you to disclose to, or if this has happened to you before, it's heavy. It's a lot. And I think that all of you that are here tonight, either this is something that's happened to you, someone's disclosed to you, or you want to make sure you're prepared. And as we know how we're all feeling tonight, we're feeling frustrated, angry, there's a heaviness about it. Um, we want to acknowledge that that's the case, and we also want to equip you with tools to be able to respond to that person. So this would be where you'd want to maybe jot down some notes. Some of you mentioned this in the chat. Thank you for trusting me with this. I think you can use this for sexual violence. You can use this for any time someone, that you're close with, discloses something to you. The biggest thing that I think you can do is thank you for trusting me, or thank you for choosing me to tell this to. If you don't know anything else to say, just thank them for trusting you, or thank you for opening up, or I appreciate you sharing this with me tonight, or choosing me, right? All this other stuff, I think if you just let them know that you are taking this seriously and that you are appreciative that, they had enough trust in you to tell you, I think that can be um, plenty right there. Of course, we have some other things that you can say, but like we mentioned earlier, I believe you, right? I think, even a survivor who may not have, I think Emily mentioned earlier that sometimes memories are fragmented. I've worked with plenty of people before that the memories they have of trauma aren't succinct like you would watch in a movie, right? They might have something here or they have something here. When our When we go through trauma, one of the coping skills that our body does, and some of you may have heard about it, is it disconnects. So that it's a phrase you've heard, dissociation. So sometimes someone who's going through trauma dissociates. That means that things kind of shut down so that because it's so overwhelming for the system doesn't want to, can't be a part of that. So when people dissociate, they sometimes lose a chunk of time, right? So just know that people their memories might be a little fuzzy, they might not be, they might have little parts here and there, they might be missing chunks of time. They may not even believe themselves totally. I've had people say, I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty, I think something like this happened. I've had people I've worked with that were very, very young, and so they might have even been pre-verbal, so they don't really have those memories, but letting them know that I believe that something bad happened to you, um, you know, because we can't guarantee when they tell this to other people or this information might get out that people are going to believe them. And there's so many examples where, if you think about legal trials, or things we've heard in the news, right? There's so many, people that, just don't believe that these people are telling the truth. So that's a big, huge thing that we can also say. We can also just check in. What do they need right now? Thank you so much for telling me. We can talk about this more if you want, or we can kind of end the conversation. Sometimes people might want to talk a little bit more. They might want to cry. They might just want to be distracted. I've had plenty of people before that they've told me something horrible and then that's it. They don't want to talk about it anymore. And maybe they just want to be distracted. And so we just talk about something else. And that's totally okay. We titrate out sometimes information based on how much we're able to handle. So some people, it's not like a water faucet where you open it, you turn it on and it just comes flowing out. Sometimes it's little by little. I've had that happen in my office before. People will tell me a little something about a traumatic event, and then they'll tell me something else later on. So finding out what they need right now can be really important to check in with them. Letting them know that you have their back, right? That they're not alone. I think this is such an isolating thing that happens to people. Um, and they might feel like, nobody else understands, or I don't have anybody else that has my back, things like that. And so we want to let them know that we've got their back. We may not have gone through what they've gone through, but we're going to be here with them. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't have to share more than you want to, right? We don't want to try to get more information. I mean, as humans, we're curious people, right? But in this situation, we don't want to be pulling out more than somebody wants to share, right? So, um, we might just want to let them talk and also reinforce that, hey, you can tell me what you want to tell me, and we can end the conversation. We can talk about it later. If you don't ever want to share anything else about this again, I'm okay with that too. We're not going to pressure to get more information. And then at some point, I mean, I think if somebody is extremely emotional, that may not be the best time to try to share resources. Think about, a time in your life when you've been really upset about something and you've talked to another person. And if they're there trying to problem solve or fix, sometimes it's not the right time, right? We just want to be emotional and we're kind of in that emotional place with things. So you'd have to kind of, see, this person and see what is appropriate then, but it might be this the first time they tell you, or sometime they tell you, it might just be very emotional and they just want to share, and then there might be a place when things have calmed down. Hey, I remember that stuff you told me a couple weeks ago. I don't know, if you want any resources. I've been through this workshop, or I know of some organizations, or I can help you find a therapist if that's something you need. Just let me know. How are we feeling? Right in the chat. How are you feeling about some of these statements? Does this feel overwhelming? Does this feel like too much? Does this feel, attainable? This feels helpful, empowered. Good. That's what we're looking for. Helpful, helpful and empathetic. Feeling better prepared. Great. Perfect with practice. Yep. Helpful and eye-opening. Statements are transparent and very helpful. Good. I always like to show people, there's a video, if you want to write it down in your notes. It's on YouTube, Brene Brown, Brene. That's the name of the lady, Brown. And just type in empathy versus sympathy. And it's Brene Brown. She's a doctorate of social work, researcher, public speaker, author, podcaster, all the things. Anyway, she's got like a cartoony video about showing empathy versus sympathy, and it's really powerful. It's like less than 2 minutes, but it really shows, once again, some statements we can say that meets the person where they are instead of trying to fix them or there's a thing she talks about, the at least, like, oh, my son is failing out of school. Well, at least your daughter is on the honor roll, that kind of thing. So, we want to stay away from that stuff or, in this kind of situation, well, at least you're safe now. We want to kind of get away from that. Thank you, Emily, for putting that up. If y'all want to save that and kind of look at it later, it's really powerful. All right. So everyday prevention. So this is not necessarily when somebody is disclosing to you. These are just things we can do in our day-to-day life, out in public around anybody, whether they're a survivor or not. Um, Number one is a consent check. So, like I said, this would be in a context of physical contact, but like I said, there might be someone in your life that you have a pattern of always hugging them when you see them, and um, we can even kind of take that back a step and say, "Hey, is it okay for me to hug you today?" Right? Um, or, like I said, consent check could be also. If someone is talking to us about something, or maybe we're leading a conversation about something, is it okay for me to still talk about this, or would you like to change the subject? Just checking in with other people. We a lot of times operate in the world just, paying attention to ourselves. And I think it's great to stop and pause and say, wait, hold on. Like, I want to hug this person, but do they want to hug me? I want to talk about this, but do they want to talk about this? So just getting consent for things. Setting a norm, right? So, I think that sometimes inappropriate conversations, especially ones that are sexual in nature, people don't think twice about it. They're in certain spaces, and whether it's with their friends or on a team or online, I don't, chat rooms, things like that, where people are saying things that are inappropriate, and that's a pattern that they're in, and they don't think twice that this is inappropriate, or this might be offensive to somebody, or this might be somebody in the room has gone through something terrible and this might be not great for them. So if we're around conversations that are getting inappropriate, we can stop that right away. We can say, hey, let's not talk about that. We don't joke about that. Let's not talk about that. That's inappropriate. We could do it, kind of to the group, or if it's something that maybe it doesn't feel quite comfortable to say that in front of a group of people, maybe we just pull apart, one person, pull them to the side, or if you're in a chat room and you can private message somebody and say, hey, let's change the subject. Let's not talk about that. We want to just end conversations. When people trivialize stuff like this, when it's sexual in nature, it doesn't, they don't think twice about, that bad thing happened. We want people to think long and hard that this stuff is not okay and joking about this stuff. We want people in society to know that this is not okay to talk about this stuff, because when they do and they trivialize it, it makes it more prevalent and that it's okay to do. And we're here to say it's not. Myth correct. Like I said, if somebody is saying, oh, well, you know, people, I guess the old thing was like somebody in a white van would snatch up kids and do bad things to them. And okay, actually, that's not true. Or, if someone has a myth about, oh, well, this happens in dark alleys, things like that. Well, no, actually, it happens most of the time in people's homes or a home of somebody that they know, right? We're going to um, change that narrative so that people understand that this is something that happens mostly to the victim, the survivor knows the person that did this to them, and that it happens in places that are really close to home, if not in the home. Um, just as a reminder, 93% of victims under 18 know their abuser. 93% of children who've been abused know their abuser. So That's a big one. 68.5 of sexual assaults occur in or near the victim's home or relative's home. So those are two really important statistics. We'll pass out information tomorrow of some other resources, and there'll be statistics there, but you can kind of educate yourself. You don't have to educate yourself on all of them or the specific numbers, but just know you can say, hey, large majority of children that get sexually abused, they know their abuser. Boundary model, right? So setting boundaries, right? If somebody is having conversations out in public that we just don't want to have for whatever reason, it doesn't matter why, we can just say, hey, I'd like to change the subject. I'd like to have a different conversation. But modeling that lets other people know that we're allowed to say that and we're allowed to take care of ourselves in that way. We don't have to endure having conversations about things that we don't want to. And then bystander support. So this can be modeled in, let's say you're in a group of people and you know somebody, in that circle, something shifts with them. Maybe their facial expression shifts, or maybe they were really enthusiastic and talkative, and all of a sudden now they're being quiet. Kind of, grab that person, or check in with them later and say, hey, would you like to go outside, or and let's talk about this? Or if it's a coworker, let's say, and you kind of notice something shifts, check in with them later on in the day. Hey, I noticed we were in that meeting and something looked like it shifted with you. Are you okay? People, one thing I know in doing this work for as long as I have is that we like when people are paying attention to us. We like when people are in tune with us. And so it feels really good that, you might not be doing okay, but if someone, in your circle or one of your friends notices that you're acting a little different and they check in with you, we feel we feel seen, we feel heard. All right, so let's figure out some steps that we can take this week. So I'm going to read through these, and then I want you to write down one or two on your piece of paper that you're willing to do this week. Save a local national hotline in your phone. Like I said, we're going to email out some resources for you, so you can use stuff from that email, or you can find your own resources. But every community has resources. If it's a small community, there may be something kind of nearby, but places like Charlotte, big cities have them. But other communities do have resources in that community. And then there's national hotlines too. So just know that there's resources out there. Share one educational post. So this could be on your social media. I think it's really easy nowadays to just hit that share button into your stories. Um, an organization like Brave Step, if you follow them, they're putting up stuff almost every single day. And you can just easily hit that share button, put it on there, and that gets it out to your network. Practice one consent check-in in a non-sexual context. So, like we said, this could be on physical touch, this could be on topics of conversation, but just something that you're going to check in with somebody on. Hey, is it okay for me to hug you today? Or is it okay for me to shake your hand? That kind of thing. Learn one statistic and share it with a friend or colleague. So it'd be easy to say, hey, I was in this workshop last night and hey, I learned this thing. Is that something that you knew of? And someone says, no, I didn't know that. Or gosh, that number sounds really high, or that sounds like a lot. But just letting one person know one of the statistics that we've learned tonight. So you can think about your own boundaries. So think about, I was thinking about this earlier, especially after COVID. I think when it gets to be like the cold and flu season, I don't want to touch people. I don't like people getting close to me. I don't want to shake people's hands. I don't want to get sick. So I know that my boundaries in the cold and flu season are to not really touch other people or get really close to other people. So think about your own boundaries, whether in any kind of situation, right? If it's a work situation or if it's meeting someone new, do I like to shake their hand, or do I like to hug someone after, spending a dinner with them, things like that? What are your boundaries? And then maybe comparing that, asking someone else that you feel close to, like, hey, I realized that, I really don't like shaking people's hands. How is that for you? And just kind of just checking in. If we get this conversation of getting people to think about their boundaries and to communicate their boundaries, we're going to be better as a society. And then identify a phrase that you'll use to interrupt a harmful joke. Like I said, whether this is in person or online, you see somebody writing something inappropriate, think of a something that you can say that's going to end that. All right. So when we talk about the resources, like I mentioned earlier, we're not trying to force these down people's throat. We're not, we have to kind of gauge when's the right time to offer resources. Um, but when you decide that that's right, always asking permission. Hey, I know of these resources, or hey, I'm willing to go look up some resources for you. Is that something that you would want me to do? And see what they say. If they say no, say, okay, I will, if that changes for you and you'd like me to help you with that, I'm totally good doing that. Um, Being okay with them if either taking it or leaving it, it's up to them. Some things might be organizations, like Brave Step is in kind of the Charlotte area. There's other places like Brave Step in other parts of the country. Um, Helping people find a therapist that, sometimes um, it's really hard to find a therapist, right? There's a lot of things you have to do to try to find somebody that's a good fit and knows what they're doing and takes your insurance and has availability and all those things. All that legwork might be a lot for somebody. So, hey, I'm willing to, try to find some names for you. Or, hey, do you need help finding an attorney? Or, we need to get you into a doctor. I'm willing to, kind of do some legwork on that for you. And then just reinforcing that autonomy, reinforcing that, hey, I'm going to do these, look up these things or provide these names of therapists, but you're in control. You can call them up right away, or you can do it down the line, or not at all. It's up to you. Just letting them know that, hey, this is something that you can do when you're ready. Just put in the chat if there's anything. How do you feel about these tangible things we've talked about of doing maybe this week or this month? How do we feel about having a brave conversation with someone, sharing a statistic, sharing something on our social, interrupting a joke? Do we feel like that's really scary, or do we feel like, yeah, that's something I can do? I had someone in a loved ones group one time that a man, and by being in the loved ones program and getting used to having these vulnerable conversations about this stuff, they went to another man in their life and they said, hey, I'm in this program and we're talking about these things. And they started talking about those things. And not that it happened to either one of them, but that it happens to people that they care about, or it's happened to people. So they started that ripple effect of having a brave conversation about something that's really hard to talk about. That person now might go talk to someone else about it. And so, it just kind of creates that ripple effect where we're going to start changing conversations. People are saying, I'm happy to do it. I can do this. It's doable. Great. That's what we're here for. We're here to make this very easy and simple. Doing these things this week or in the next couple of weeks, and not just doing this stuff one time, right? We want to keep doing this. Keep posting on your social. Keep having these conversations out in public. Um, so, like we talked about earlier, just finding one of those things that you're going to do. Um, think about where you're going to do it. When, oh gosh, I really feel like I need to do this at the gym, or I need to do this, out with my buddies when we're watching sports or whatever. Um, have an accountability partner. So maybe making a commitment to someone in your life. Hey, I took this workshop. I made this commitment to do this thing. Can I check in with you in 2 weeks and to make sure I did it? Because we want to just keep this going, right? We want to make sure that we're doing our part. And then explore additional resources. Like I said, we're going to send out resources, and you're going to have those, but there's other things out there. I tend to like to, for me, following different organizations on social media keeps it in the forefront for me. And then I can read those things, watch those reels. I can have a conversation with someone about it, share it with a friend, put it on my stories. But for me, that's a really quick and tangible way for me to have resources at the ready.